Yesterday we discussed how with the mindfulness of every arising in the body, we observe this mind and body, how they arise, and their conditionality. And whatever voluntary movement you do, these psychophysical phenomena are bound to arise. In this case, nama causing rupa, mentality causing this materiality. And in a similar way, you can observe in other voluntary movements. However, when the meditation teachers interview you, sometimes there are times that yogis cannot report to the essential point. So today we shall discuss about this. It is already a little bit over a month, and as one notes the arising object with a systematic manner, seeing the sabhavas, the essential individual essences, one should be able to report in a precisely with a few words. So if one notes meticulously, one is bound to experience the individual essence, like experiencing the flavor in every food you take. It is quite obvious. So long as you are able to sustain mindfulness, you are bound to know these things. So today we shall discuss about this subject. The nearest example is when you are taking an apple, you bite it. Just biting and swallowing, you cannot experience the flavor of that fruit. Only when you chew properly and the juice comes on the tongue, will you be able to experience the flavor of that fruit, such as sweetness, coolness, maybe at times sour flavor. Only when you chew properly, the juice comes out and you experience this flavor. When it gets on the tongue, you can feel the flavor of its sweetness, sourness, and so on. Same thing with grapes. If you are taking grapes also, it may be sour sometimes or sweet at other times. And also the same thing with oranges and any other item of food, which has its own individual flavor, which you can experience when you chew properly and only when the juice comes out and that comes into contact with the respective part of the tongue. Not every part of the tongue, but some part of the tongue, where you can experience the flavor, sensitive part of the tongue. So too with the practice, when you are noting every arising object in the body, you cannot just note ordinarily or casually, otherwise you will not experience the flavor or quality, in this case the individual quality of the object noted. Only when you digest it, just as you digest your food, such as proper connection with the object, instantly, precisely, with proper precise aiming and energy, so that your mindfulness will be activated continuously. Only then, with the continuous activation of mindfulness, the mind will fall calm and collected on the object noted. Samadhi arises, and you accumulate this quality of mind state, wholesome mind state. Then only you will be able to experience the quality of that object noted. Otherwise, if you cannot note it properly and note casually, then the mind will not become collected on the object, and you will not observe or experience the taste of flavor, like swallowing the fruit at once. You will not experience the flavor of that fruit. So you must chew, digest it with sati. And when it gets on the tongue, you will see the flavor, you will experience the flavor. And in Pali it is known as sarasa, meaning flavor, which exists in every item of food. It is synonymous with sabhava, individual essence, individual quality, individual or unique characteristics. This sarasa is the individual mind, psychophysical qualities, like the flavor. So you note in order to know this flavor, this quality, individual quality. So it is noticed that some of the yogis cannot yet experience this kind of flavor, and they need some more practice, experience. And whenever Sayadaw asked his meditation teachers, he found that out. So today he would like to discuss this subject properly. In sitting meditation, the primary objects are rising, falling, sitting, touching. These four things only. Of course, in the beginning, only two things, namely rising and falling of the abdomen. Now, rising and falling is just ordinary usage, common usage. It can be spoken in English, Burmese, or any language. But what really exists in rising are the individual qualities, namely stiffness, tension, movement, inflation, hardness, softness, and so on. And in falling, relaxation, calmness, softness, deflation, and so on. All these things are the realities, the ultimate objects, which exist in these rising and falling. It's just like apple. If you just bite the apple and swallow, you will not experience the flavor. But when you note carefully, or chew carefully, like noting this rising and falling carefully, you are bound to observe the sabhava, natural characteristic, or individual qualities, such as stiffness, tension, movement, inflation, softness, hardness, and so on, like experiencing sweetness, sourness, and so on in chewing the fruit properly. So these things, stiffness, tension, movement, are the sabhavas, natural characteristics, or unique qualities. At what time? At the time of rising. And the same thing with falling. At the time of falling is relaxation, movement, deflation, softness are bound to occur. Like taking apple, you are bound to see these individual qualities during rising and falling. These are the realities known as paramattha, the ultimate objects, like the flavor in the fruit. So if you just bite and swallow, no food will be properly digested. So also with the objects. If you cannot note, if you note casually, superficially, you will not know, you will not be digesting the objects. So to know the flavor, you have to chew properly and observe the paramatthas, the realities, the ultimate objects. So these are like the flavor of the food. You can only observe them when you note from the beginning to end of these objects with proper aiming and energy, as has been given in the talk about qualities of Satipatthana. To note instantly by rushing one's noting mind into the object without hesitation. However, some yogis seem not being able to do that, to note the object with proper energy, with driving force. Not yet. there may be some conceptualization, intellectualization, which has been said as not your imperial, not your real knowledge. But they are not still convinced as yet. So only when you activate your mindfulness with proper targeting, precise targeting and driving force, will you be able to observe these empirical knowledge, experience knowledge, which are the realities, ultimates. As for the fruit, if you have not had the experience with the fruit, or if you have not taken the fruit as yet, you will not know the flavor of that fruit, such as this apple is sweet and cool and so on. Only when you do it by yourself, this is your experiential knowledge, experiential observation, will you be able to notice the realities. In this case, vaya putapa, the manifestation of the tangible element of the wind. They are the real materialities which can be observed when you digest with full force. Now, when you are noting, paying attention to the abdomen, the noting, you note to observe the ultimates, the individual qualities or characteristics going beyond the form of the abdomen or the manner of rising and falling. And the practice is to observe these ultimate realities. This applies to rising and falling, sitting, touching, and also during walking, lifting, moving and placing. As you intend to lift, lifting takes place by stages, and as you lift your foot, you will feel lightness or feeling being pushed up, and so all these things are sabhavas. And when you're moving, you feel as though you're being pulled or pushed from behind, movement, all these things again are sabhavas. And then when you press down, place your foot down, you feel heaviness, pressure and all these things, they are also sabhavas. So you are to note these things, to observe these individual characteristics. Only you will observe them only when you activate your mindfulness with full force to digest it, just as you digest your fruit, not casually or superficially. Although we have been discussing the practice itself, the method of practice, and let the yogis report and introduce these observations in their own usage, naturally, these sabhavas. So these sabhavas have not been discussed so far. Now, in order to convince you or to make you understand about these materialities, it needs to be mentioned from this stage, at this stage. Up to this time, we have discussed only the method, not the observations as yet. Now today we have discussed this sabhavas. Now out of these, there are four elements, primary elements. The most obvious element is the materiality, sabhava of the materialities, namely the Patavi Dhatu. That's the first of the four primary elements. Patavi Dhatu, the element of earth, or hardness or harshness, or distension. Coarseness, hardness, harshness, softness make up this Patavi Dhatu, the earth element. For instance, when you feel the rocky surface, you will feel it hard. And when you feel the ordinary earth, you will feel soft. So this is the softness and hardness of this earth is supporting, so that we don't just fall down or just go through the earth. They are supporting us. So too in the body, the Paṇḍitā, the earth element, is supporting, is standing or propping the elements, other elements. Paṇḍitā has a property, quality of hardness, harshness. For instance, if you feel the bone, let us say in your hand there is the bones and the flesh or the skin, and you will feel hardness if you feel the bone, or sometimes heat, cold, and so on. But mainly hardness in the bone. And when you feel the skin or flesh, you will feel it soft. These are the manifestations of Paṇḍitā, the earth element. Same thing with stiffness, tension, movement, and all that. So, at times you feel heat, you feel warmth, you feel cold, you feel sometimes solidity, sometimes cohesion, flowing. They all exist together with this Paṇḍitā. They don't exist alone, they exist in compound with this earth element. Therefore, this Paṇḍitā itself is hardness, softness, distension. The bone is hard, the flesh is soft, and so are the other things like hair of the body, hair of the head, nail, teeth. All these things are also Paṇḍitā. They have the quality of hardness. It is quite obvious that when you feel hard, you will know that it is hard. When you feel soft, you will know that it is soft. So you are seeing the realities. When you see this Paṇḍitā, you are seeing the realities. This is observing the first of the four primary elements. Now the bone is hard. So is hardness the bone? No. Hardness is just hardness, sabhava, the individual characteristic. If you are asked to show what is this hardness, you cannot show. This is just the quality. So when you feel hardness, you know that it is hard. When you feel soft, you know that it is soft. So softness and hardness are sabhavas. They are individual qualities. And this hardness, softness, which are the qualities of this, which exist in the rocks and earth, they are the sabha, the mere qualities. So in order to observe these qualities, you are asked to note in every situation. Like when your hand or part of the body feel these bones, hair, nails, teeth, and all these things, you are bound to see or observe one of these qualities, like hardness or softness. When you feel it hard, you know that it is hard. When you feel the soft material, you know that it is soft. In this way, you know hardness and softness. When you feel hardness, in most cases, this is rather unpleasant. You feel unpleasant. When it is soft, in most cases, you feel pleasant. So, at the same time, you observe these mental qualities, nama, qualities of nama. So, in order to observe them, you are required to note every touch, every movement, to observe hardness, softness. When a substance has the quality of hardness, or hardness is in excess, you are bound to observe it as hard. When the quality of softness is in excess, you will observe it as soft, and you will know as hardness or softness, as the case may be. Let us go to another primary element, namely āpō, the element of water, cohesion, fluidity, solidity, which you can observe, like the flavor or sabhava. Now in the body there are sweat, you sweat, the tears, and nose running, or the bone is not only hard but it has a solid feeling, and the flesh or the skin is not only soft but it has a cohesive feeling, cohesive property, And then heaviness also is another quality of this abo dhatu, the element of water. So in the body, all these things are happening, and you cannot deny them. This cohesion, you cannot deny the presence of cohesion, solidity, heaviness, flowing. At times it is hardness, solid hardness. Sometimes soft, solid feeling, but it is soft. So all these things are very. The one thing is this abo dhatu itself alone is not so obvious. It is because it is very subtle. It is observed in association with other elements like heat, cold, and so on. Like this heat, solid feeling of heat, or hot feeling of solid, whichever way you take it, or cool solidity, or cool cohesion, or cool flowing property, or stiffness with solidity, or solid stiffness, or solid tension, or sometimes it's flowing property, and all these things you cannot observe them separately by themselves. You can observe them together with other elements, because this abo dhatu itself is very subtle and delicate. So these are the materialities, these are realities of matter, paramattha, the ultimate objects, which you are to observe. Then we have this another primary element, tejo dhatu, the element of temperature, heat, cold, warmth. In the body are these things, elements, heat, cold, warmth, and lightness. In the body, naturally there is this body heat. Then when one gets sick, there's fever, there's excessive heat, becomes hot due to some fever like typhoid or malaria and so on. So in the body are these elements. The body temperature has the property of lightness. So this tejo dhatu is also sarasa, individual flavor, or sabhava lakkhana, the individual characteristics. Body heat, then you feel hardness, and it feels very difficult. You feel stiffness, hardness, and not easy to move around. So when you are lifting also, you can lift it easily because of this tejo dhatu. Now as for this another element, vayo dhatu, the element of the wind, it is manifested in terms of stiffness, tension, movement, vibration, and so on. When you are turning around or lifting, moving and placing, you are bound to feel these sensations, such as relaxation, softness, relaxation, stiffness, movement, and vibration. They are quite obvious. Now we have this mentality, nama, which has the quality of knowing the objects. Of course, knowing is just, consciousness is just one thing, but depending on the nature or the kind of the object, we have 6 kinds of consciousness. When you are seeing something, seeing a sight, we have this seeing consciousness. When we hear a sound, there arises this hearing consciousness, tasting consciousness, smelling consciousness, touching body consciousness, mind consciousness, and so on. When we have ideas and thoughts, we have mind consciousness. So mind is just one, but depending on the kind of object, we have 6 kinds of consciousness. So together with this consciousness are the so-called cetasikas, mental states, which tend to decorate the consciousness. For instance, there is this phassa, another mental state, contact, feeling, sensation feeling, vedana as another mental state, and also in this way, in the mentality are such things as phassa, sensation and all that, like the flavor. They're quite obvious. So all these things are to be noted and known. These objects are to be noted and known. But when the teachers ask the yogis, when you are sitting and noting rising and falling, which are the primary object, they will start with the question on the primary object. When you pay attention to the abdomen, rising comes up, falling comes up, these are the primary objects. So they will start with the primary objects, whether you note or not. The yogi may say, note, I note, or I don't note. Then they will ask you about the quality of your mindfulness. Do you note it closely, effectively, in a sustained manner, and all that sort of thing. They will ask about the quality of your mindfulness. So then you have to ask accordingly, you have to answer accordingly. So if he has to interview the yogis, he will ask these questions first. In the interview between the teacher and the yogis, the teachers ask the yogis in order to help in their progress. And when the teacher asks questions whether he or she notes, then the yogi has to respond whether he or she can note. This is helping the teacher. This is mutual assistance, mutual help, cooperation between the teacher and the meditator. So he may ask, do you note the primary object closely with proper aiming and exertion of energetically? Then he or she may answer yes. Do you aim properly, precisely? Then he or she may say yes or no. These are the qualities of the practice in question. Same thing goes with other objects, whether these objects are noted or not, or whether they are noted meticulously, effectively or not. And when in walking meditation, and lifting, moving and placing, are you able to connect with these objects precisely? Then the yogis have to respond. The same thing with other secondary objects. So in this way, there will be this question and answer between the teacher and the yogi, and helping mutually for the progress of the practice. When you note effectively, that means you note meticulously, you follow closely, and the teacher will ask. And if you are able to do so, what do you see, what do you observe, or what do you know? So the objects that you are noting are rising and falling, which are the main objects, primary objects. So you have to report what you observe in respect of this rising and falling, which are the main objects, especially the sabhavas, the individual characteristics, or tracking down the sensations. So yogis will report what he or she observes. Now when one notes, one may first see the form of the abdomen. This is in the beginning it will be like this. This is honest reporting in the beginning. Or one may see the manner known as akara, a manner of rising and falling in the beginning, or after the form. One may see the rising and falling. This is again in the beginning. So this is again honest reporting. And later, with the progress in the practice, one may see the sabhavas. As one sees or notes this stiffness, one knows stiffness. As one observes tension, one knows tension. And if one observes movement, one knows movement. In this way, one will come to observe these sensations, qualities. For some people who are more meticulous, They may report like, we see just these sensations, stiffness, tension and movement, not just one stiffness or one tension or one movement, but they're not continuous, they are in segments. One stiffness after another, or one softness or tension after another, and so on, in segments. They may be able to report like this. So these are the reporting of paramatthas, the ultimate things which are experiential knowledge. And but when you are reporting, of course you don't report from conceptual knowledge, what you think you observe, then this conceptual knowledge will not be the real one. Whereas when you report what you really observe through your personal experience, then your experiential knowledge will be the real one. For sincere yogis, they are very energetic and zealous to report what they observe. So when they are noting rising and falling, their mind wanders. So they might report in the beginning, the rising and falling are two things, they're simple objects, but when I'm noting them, the mind goes out, the mind wanders, there's a lot of distraction, restlessness, and mind is never stable. I cannot keep my mind, I cannot keep track on these rising and falling. So such a person will know the nature of the mind. This is knowing the nature of the mind, that the mind is restless, the mind is not stationary, difficult to control. This is sincere reporting. As for others, because they are slack, they may not realize that they have drifted along in the wandering mind, fantasies, and having a nice planning and all that, mental stories, and they won't realize that they are thinking for a very long time. So, if they report like, say, my mind is very restless, it goes out, this wandering mind, and this shows a sincere reporting that such yogis are very meticulous about their mindfulness. And also they may report that they observe these sensations in the body, like itchy feeling, aching, and all that pain, numbness, and all that. And when they note them, these sensations increase in intensity, or they just remain dormant. They just stay like this. They never go away. Things like that. Or they mutate. They change into another sensation or things like that. Then I have to go back to the rising and falling. Bring my mind back to rising and falling and all that sort of thing. So they would report the sequence of their observations, and they are able to also notice the intensity, the rise and fall of these sensations carefully. If such yogis are able to report like this sincerely, then the teachers will conclude, will comment that such yogis are bound to progress very soon. Everywhere, every time you note respectfully and carefully, and such yogis are sincere. Such sincere yogis will observe within 1 or 2 sits, will become convinced of the nature of the mind, the basic nature of the mind. As the Buddha has said, the mind, the qualities of the mind, Donigaha, difficult to tame. And who know, it goes away very fast, arises and passes away very fast. It is very light, it goes very fast, goes away very fast. Yathagama nipati no. That is, although the body is in the retreat, the mind is elsewhere. So this is the nature of the mind. So with the initial respect and care and sincerity, if such yogis sit within 1 or 2 sits, then one will come to know the nature of the mind. So such yogis may answer without being asked what happens to his or her mind. So although I keep my mind on rising and falling, if he or she is asked, how long can you keep? Oh, I try to keep, but I cannot keep for a long time. The mind is very restless. It is not calm. It flies, goes here and there. It wanders off. And such yogis, if they report like this in the beginning, they show that they are respectful and careful. Some teachers may ask, when does your mind go out? What are you noting at that time when your mind goes out? Then the yogi, sincere, respectful, careful yogi may answer, while I'm noting rising and falling, the mind goes out. As soon as I was going to note rising, the mind wanders out. Or as soon as I was about to note falling, the mind wanders out. In this way, if he or she is able to report exactly, precisely, then such yogis are said to be very respectful and careful. So sometimes the teacher may ask, before the mind goes out, is the object like rising and falling obvious? So the respectful and careful yogi may answer, well, the rising and falling are obvious or not obvious, or whether he or she is able to note meticulously, try to note with precise aiming and exertion of energy, or whether he or she is just casually following the objects. And after you have noted your mind, because you are aware of your wandering mind, you noted it, and then bring back your mind. Where did you bring back your mind? Could you bring back your mind to the primary object? Is the primary object obvious or not? Then the respectful and careful yogi may say that after noting the mind, wandering mind, the rising is obvious or falling is obvious or not. He or she may be able to answer exactly in this way. So when the mind comes back, what is the thing you first note? Do you first note rising, or first of all do you note the falling after you have noted your noting mind, or after bringing back your wandering mind? And what do you note? Do you note rising or do you note falling? Then the respectful and careful yogis would be able to answer precisely. And there may be this question, like what is the situation of the object that you are noting? What is the difference between the object before the mind goes out and after you have brought back your mind? What is the situation of the object you have been noting? Is the situation, the condition the same condition or different condition? Then the respectful and careful yogi would be able to answer precisely whether it is in the same condition before and after or different condition before and after. Sometimes who are more respectful and careful may be able to answer like this. Now, before the mind wanders off, the object is different. But when I bring back my mind to this object, it is different condition. It is not the same object that I am noting. It is a new object. It's not the same one as the object that I noted before the mind went out. So in this way, the yogis, the respectful yogis, may be able to answer, may be able to differentiate between the condition or nature of the objects before and after the mind has gone out. Like the current, a stream, the water flows. The water is of the same nature, at least it looks the same ordinarily, but it is not the same water which is flowing. In fact, the old giving place to the new. Although the nature, it appears the same. One thinks that it is the same water all the time. In fact, it is not so. So, as a yogi also will be able to differentiate between the two kinds of objects, or two conditions of the same object, before and after the mind has gone out. That the yogis, such yogis will be able to differentiate between the two conditions, before and after the mind goes out. So there's a French proverb saying that if you cross a river, you cannot cross it again, the same river. That is quite realistic, because the water has flown down already, and the water the river water that he or she is crossing the next time will not be the same water. So those yogis who are able to appreciate the practice, cherish the practice, will be able to report about the wandering mind as soon as it goes out, and be aware of the wandering mind at once. Then when the mind comes back, is brought back to the primary object, he or she may be able to differentiate between the object before and after the mind goes out. That the mind, the object noted after the mind goes out is different, is new, like that. So in this way, the respectful and careful yogi will be able to report like this. So, in fact, the rising and falling is one able to note precisely, with precision, carefully, with proper targeting and energetic manner. So, if the question is asked like this, then yogis should be prepared to give the correct answer. Then the teachers will love such yogis. So, in short, the teachers are giving assistance by way of showing the way, asking questions and so on, so that you may be able to experience the benefit of the practice of Satipatthana. This is done in accordance with the guidance of the late Venerable Master Sayadaw. So yogis should be able to report meticulously, whether they note continuously, in order to realize the individual qualities, and to report not from conceptual knowledge, but to report from what they actually experience in a short way, and by this way may they be able to assist the teachers effectively. That's all.